Starting in 2026, the U.S. is making some really big moves with its childhood vaccine policy. The number of routine shots is actually going down, and the whole way parents and doctors decide on them is about to change. So let's get into what's happening, and more importantly, why.
Why the huge overhaul all of a sudden? For decades, the thinking in the U.S. has been pretty comprehensive, kind of like a more is more approach. To really get why that's changing now, we've got to look at exactly what's being taken off the standard schedule.
Okay, so at its heart, this new policy is cutting way back on the number of vaccines that are automatically recommended for every single kid. And just to be super clear, this isn't some small adjustment. We're talking about a totally different philosophy here.
So, up until now, the standard U.S. schedule has been, well, pretty packed. It recommended vaccines to protect all kids against about 17 different diseases. That's been the baseline for a long, long time. But under these new 2026 guidelines, that number is dropping. The new schedule is now going to universally recommend vaccines for just 11 diseases for every child.
So, which 6 vaccines got moved off that universal list? We're talking about some pretty familiar ones. Influenza, rotavirus, hepatitis A and B, RSV, which is respiratory syncytial virus, and meningococcal disease. Now, they haven't been eliminated or anything. Instead, they've been shifted into a new category that officials are calling shared decision-making. Basically, it puts a lot more emphasis on the conversation between you and your doctor.
So you have to wonder, what was the official reason for such a huge change? Well, a big piece of the puzzle is actually overseas. It turns out U.S. health officials were looking at other developed countries as a kind of model for this new, leaner approach.
And the main example they kept pointing to was Denmark. See, for years, Denmark has had a national schedule with fewer routine vaccines. They leave out shots for things like rotavirus, hepatitis A, and the flu. The argument from U.S. officials was basically, if this more streamlined approach is working over there, maybe it could be a model for us too.
But wow, the pushback from public health experts was almost immediate, and it was strong. They argued that you just can't copy and paste one country's health policy onto another. As this quote points out, the US and Denmark are just vastly different. We're talking different populations, different healthcare systems, even different rates of disease.
And this really gets to the heart of it. This new policy didn't exactly get a warm welcome from everyone. Instead, it created this massive, very public split right down the middle of the health community.
Let's break down the two sides here. On one side, you have public health experts and pediatricians. They're warning that if you remove these recommendations without brand new clinical data, you could see a rise in preventable hospitalizations. But on the other side, you have officials from the Department of Health and Human Services, that's HHS, and they're arguing that this change actually brings the U.S. more in line with international norms and could even build more public trust.
Now, with all this debate going on, it's really important to talk about what isn't changing. The foundational vaccines, the ones that have been the bedrock of kids' health for generations, they are staying exactly where they are.
These core vaccines are still universally recommended for every single child. We're talking about measles, mumps, and rubella, or MMR, polio, DTaP, all the ones you see here. When it comes to these, there is solid agreement all around the world.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth. We've talked about the policy, we've talked about the controversy, but what does this actually mean for you, as a parent or a caregiver, trying to figure all this out?
First thing, and this is probably the most important point, your access has not changed. If you want your child to get the flu shot or the RSV vaccine, you can still get it. All those vaccines that were on the old schedule are still available, and yes, they are still covered by insurance. This isn't about restricting access, it's about changing how the recommendation is made.
So this whole shared decision-making thing makes that conversation with your pediatrician more critical than ever. The visit is probably going to feel like it has 3 parts. First, you'll talk about the core, universally recommended vaccines. Then, you'll dive into your child's specific health and any risk factors they might have. And finally, you'll decide together which of those other available vaccines make sense for your child and your family.
So look, if you only remember 3 things from all of this, let it be these. 1. Fewer vaccines are on the automatic for everyone schedule. 2. That phrase, shared decision-making, is now at the center of the whole process. And 3, and this is a big one, your access to these vaccines and your insurance coverage for them, that hasn't changed at all.
Make no mistake, this policy is one of the biggest shifts in American public health we've seen in decades. And it really leaves us with a massive question. As the U.S. pivots from universal guidance toward more individual choice, what will this new chapter mean for the health of the entire country?